On our test review sheet for lessons 3.7 to 4.4 and then review a little bit of chapters 1 and 2, this is number 28 from that review, and it's very important that you're able to take a standard form function or equation like you're seeing there in number 28, that is in standard form, and change it into vertex form. So if you forgot, this is what vertex form looks like in general using variables. We have this number a, which should be the same as the number a in standard form. Remember, this is a, -4 is b, and the 5 is called c in standard form. But in vertex form, it looks like this. We have this number a in front of parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we have x minus h, quantity squared, and then outside the parentheses, we have plus k. And in this form, the reason why we call it vertex form is these numbers that you see identified as h and k represent the vertex. And this is also something we've talked about with translations. This is the way we take the parent y equals x squared, and h tells us how we're moving that left or right. If h is positive, we move to the right. If h is negative, making this plus inside, subtracting a negative. If h is negative, then we move to the left. K tells us how we move the parent that starts at the origin. K will tell us how to move it vertically or up and down. If it's a positive number, we move it up. Negative, we move it down. So that's all tied in to what we call vertex form. So here's how we can take standard form and change to vertex form. So I'm just going to rewrite the problem that's given. And it involves some completing the square principles. And if you remember, when we're completing the square, we always have to make sure that this coefficient of x squared, this lead coefficient, has to be 1. So I'm going to change this equation temporarily to make this become a coefficient of 1, which is going to involve dividing everything all the way across by 2. Or you could also think of multiplying by a half. So here's what it looks like after dividing by 2. Okay, so that's kind of a temporary little fix. Whenever the number in front of x squared isn't just 1, we've got this little additional step that we're going to have to take. We're going to have to make it become 1, and now let's think about what we would do to complete the square. Okay, remember what goes in the parentheses when you complete the square. We'll do the square root of x squared. This sign just comes down. And we always divide the linear coefficient by 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, so this is the part, what I'm about to do is the part that usually people miss when it comes to changing the vertex form. So what we're going to do is take this number that we just came up with in the parentheses and square it. Well, 1 squared is still 1. I'm going to take that number, 1 squared, and I'm going to go up to this line right above this standard form that I was working with previously. And on the end of that standard form, I'm going to subtract 1. If this had been x minus 4, I would be subtracting 16, 4 squared. If this were x minus 9, I would be subtracting 81. If this were x plus 6, I would be subtracting 36. It really doesn't matter whether it's plus or minus. You're always subtracting from the end of the standard form whatever this number in the parentheses squared happens to be. So you always subtract, and now you're going to be able to put these together, these two constants. If you put those together, think of this as 2 halves. 5 halves minus 2 halves is 3 halves. Alright, so now we're just going to put it back. Remember, vertex form should be solved for y. Well, we're not solved for y here, but that's easy enough to do. We're just going to now multiply by 2. Okay, 2 times a half is 1y. So multiplying by 2, Now I get my A number back. You see how the A is the same. It's 2 in standard form, so it's also 2 in vertex form. Nothing changes inside the parentheses, but I also have to remember to multiply this number outside of the parentheses by 2. And if you multiply 3/2 by 2, you get 3. So that is the standard form version. The vertex form version of this standard form equation. This is vertex form. And the follow-up part of this question is identify the vertex. Well, again, the vertex, the h number, which in this case is 1, represents the x coordinate of the vertex, and this outside number represents the y. So I've circled vertex form, and this is the vertex. So I hope that helps. It's the same procedure every time. So you can go back and look at lesson 3.5. We did some of these when we learned how to complete the square. You've got some examples where you did these for homework. So hopefully that helps, and work hard, get ready for this test.